Why, good morning there, friends. Yes, I'm still nursing my habit with coffee. Oftentimes, my coffee gets cold doing this type of thing in the morning. But what I want to do, and as you can tell, I'm here in my shop once again, I'm going to be doing some testing with some of the gunpowder that I've recently made. I kind of want to do this before I get it into the barrel of my gun to kind of give me a feel for what I'm going to be dealing with. And with that being said, I kind of want to not so much address something, but put this into the context of homemade gunpowder. And that's the operative word, context. Okay. Now, I've been showing through clear glass jars the difference between your charcoals. Charcoal that has a low specific gravity, such as willow. Cottonwood has a specific gravity of 0.41. And then we can see that your buckthorn alder and even the cherry that I've recently made some gunpowder with has a specific gravity of 0.50. And we're going to see how clean that burns. But when you're first learning to make homemade gunpowder, as I did several years ago, the information that was available on YouTube seemed to be very specific towards pyrotechnics and or repacking model rocket engines. And in that context, you would want a gunpowder that has a low specific gravity. And at that time, there was a lot of channels out there praising the value of willow. It's light, it burns fairly clean in the context of pyrotechnics and or model rocket engine repacking. And that's what I started doing first, was with willow. And in the context of going down your muzzle-loading barrel and shooting it out of your barrel, a lot of us have discovered that willow is not that clean burning. It leaves a lot of those little white specks behind and or a lot of unburnt, I don't want to say unburnt powder, but the charcoal residue. Okay. So then we start looking at different types of wood, and it wasn't until Hoffman Reproductions leaked what seems to be the formula for Swiss gunpowder, and the statement was made buckthorn alder that was seasoned, allowed to dry for 3 years. And it was at that point in time that I went, it's about specific gravity, because as I have stated and have come to learn and appreciate, buckthorn alder has a specific gravity of 0.50. So those specific gravities do relate to your homemade gunpowder in the context of going down your gun barrel. See? And I just kind of want to share a few more things regarding specific gravity, because since then I've learned that Schutzen blends three charcoals. They blend the buckthorn alder, they blend hazelnut, and they blend maple. Now the buckthorn alder, once again, 0.50, hazelnut 0.52, and the silver leaf maple, which I'm assuming is what they're using, is 0.51. So these factories are sticking right around that 0.50, 0.51, 0.52. Okay, now my western juniper, or I shouldn't say that, the alligator juniper is 0.48. So it's a little light when you compare it to, say, your buckthorn alder or even cherry that I'm going to be testing with a 0.50. So these specific gravities in the context of making gunpowder to go down your muzzle loading guns appears to make a huge difference. Now, with that being stated, I feel at this point in time, judging my personal gunpowders as they're being clean or dirty, for me, is kind of an irrelevant concept, just simply because we've seen everybody take 3 or 4 shots. I've done it myself, run a wet cleaning patch, and oh yeah, this is dirty, oh this is clean. But you're comparing your gunpowder to what? Swiss? Maybe even Goex. I've seen people out there compare Swiss and Goex and show how much more dirty Goex is. Now, with this being stated and in this context, and I've said this before in this channel, but for the benefit of new viewers, I'm going to restate it. Okay? Even at this recent Cache Le Plus rendezvous, there were 3 of us that shot together. We all shot 21 targets. I was using Goex. I shot 21 targets. Then we turned right around without cleaning our gun barrels and shot at another 8 targets. I never swabbed my barrel, cleaned the barrel. I never saw Jonathan or William clean their barrels either. So in this context, how dirty is your Goex gunpowder really burning if it does not prevent you from loading from shot to shot to shot to shot? Now, I use a spit patch, and I've used a spit patch for decades now, okay? And there's a very specific reason for that, and maybe in another video I'll discuss that. But I've also heard things like, well, Goex sucks. Elephant's better, vice versa. Well, at this rendezvous, a fellow was talking as to why he hated Goex. And it wasn't because it was dirty. It's because when he goes and pours from the can to the powder horn, does his shoot, he puts everything back in the can, then he pours it again, does this, does that, does this. And what his final point was is that all of this motion here is internally crushing the gunpowder, and it's creating too much 4F dust. So he's not getting consistent pressures through his gun barrel. Now, is that really true, or is that just an excuse for having a lot of misses? And I've said this before, guys. You can shoot through chronographs all you want, but if you're shooting at a steel target this big, 100 yards out, and you hit the lower corner of it, yay, I hit the target. We do the same thing at the Cache Le Plus rendezvous. You got a tiny little target about that big, yay, I hit it, even me with my pistol. But where did I hit it? Did I dead center it, or did I hit a little corner of it and I get to score it? See, those are some of the things that I like to talk about when I talk about the context of these homemade gunpowders coming out of your muzzle loaders. Now, you've got a whole different context when you take your homemade black powder and put it, say, like in a 45 Colt cartridge, or even a 44 Magnum cartridge, or even a 9mm cartridge, or anything in between. You've changed the context of what you're wanting to have this black powder do for you in a true muzzle loading gun. Okay? Now, with the recent video that I did showing the value of the specific gravities, somebody made a comment and I kind of concur with it. Okay? And as I said, you're asking a specific measure of volume of your potassium nitrate to consume a specific amount of charcoal, but that amount of charcoal is truly based on what the specific gravity is of that charcoal. So, I hope this is clear enough for everybody to understand. And just one other thing too. longer milling times does make a difference, okay? And that 24-hour milling time seems to be a good balance. Now, I know with my new white container, and I've mentioned, and because I've increased the speed of how it tumbles through my ball mill, I can get my gunpowder 100 grams at least to compact solid the bottom of that can in about 16 hours. While looking at older videos, we were all led to believe it's done. I don't believe that, because I do have some gunpowder, especially with my peanut shell, that I did that, and it leaves a lot of little white specks behind. So what I've done with the cherry and the eastern red cedar heartwood, when it got to the point of my gunpowder being thoroughly compacted at the bottom of my milling container, I've taken a stick and I've stirred it up completely, and then I've remilled it. And every 2 hours up to 30 hours, I did that. Opened the container and remilled what was already beginning to recompact in the bottom of the jar. That's something that I do that I feel makes a better burning, cleaning gunpowder, okay? So as I get ready to do these burn tests, keep those things in mind. Yes, willow burns fast. It can burn clean, as I showed in a previous video when I dropped my Borlight down the barrel, and I showed everybody after 20 rounds how clean my barrel was with the willow. Is that because I've added an extra gram of sulfur? You decide. So let's, I'm going to get set up and we'll do some burn testing. I'm going to start with some older gunpowder that I made, like with the Barberry. These all have different specific gravities. And then you can judge for yourself the value of the specific gravity in the charcoals that you are using to make your homemade gunpowder. Okay, this gunpowder is Barberry, milled for 30 hours, and it has a specific gravity of anywhere from 0.60 to 0.63, which puts us in the same category of Hard Rock Maple at 0.63. Let's see what it does. Seemed to go up pretty quick, but compared to others, I would say it's slow. But let's look and see what's left behind. Okay, getting this in as much sunlight as I can. If you guys can see, there's an awful lot of little white specks left behind. Okay, and I can feel it's pretty gritty. Okay, and there is a lot of it left behind. Again, emphasizing you've got more potassium nitrate per volume as the heavier specific gravity of the charcoal. Okay, so I'm going to clean this off and we'll do the next gunpowder for the test. So this next gunpowder is basswood. And basswood has a specific gravity of anywhere from 0.32 to 0.42. So let's see what it does. Burned pretty slow, didn't it? But did I mill this for the 30 hours or did I mill it less? But let me show you what's left behind close up and in the sun. Okay, if you guys can look at that, you can see how dirty it is. And you can still see a lot of little white specks on that board. And yeah, there's a lot of smoke coming back in there, just a slight morning breeze. But to emphasize the point is that with a lower specific gravity, you're asking a very specific measure of potassium nitrate to consume more charcoal than realistically what it's capable of consuming. Now, I will concede your 777 Pyrodex burns slow, but you get more pressures and you get more feet per second with it because you're allowing those gaseous pressures to build up in that what is a thermal runaway. Okay, so that's basswood with a specific gravity of 0.42 at the most. And bear in mind, cottonwood, which I've already done in previous videos several years ago, burns dirty, but it did burn. And at that time I didn't have a chronograph, so I don't know what the feet per second were. But this should give everybody a little bit of a guideline as to how your gunpowders are performing, especially with an open ear burn. So let me get reset up and we'll grab the next gunpowder. So here's 20 grains of the gunpowder I made with Hard Rock Maple 0.63 specific gravity. That burned pretty quick, didn't it? Seemingly, okay, but you can see there's still those little fine white pieces of potassium nitrate left behind, and there is a smoky residue. This is what's being left behind in your gun barrels if you're overly concerned about how clean or dirty your gunpowder really is. Now I will tell you that that maple gunpowder was pocked with a 2-inch die, and the milling time was about 24. I don't remember specifically. I wasn't really tracking all of that, but I do know when it comes to the peanut shell, I only milled that just until it was all compacted in the bottom, and then I just decided to, let it go at that. Well, in fact, that's probably what I'll do next, so we can kind of have a comparison. So before I light this peanut shell gunpowder off, I need to note, to put this into the context, that barberry gunpowder that I previously tested and the basswood were moistened up with my groundwater, not distilled water. And as I have tried to show in a previous video, there's a lot of minerals in my groundwater, and that has a little bit of an effect on the velocities, as I showed through my chronograph in a previous video. But this peanut shell is mixed with 50% water, 50% acetone, and if I remember correctly, this had a specific gravity of somewhere around 47, 48. I forgot to write that on the jar. I'm just kind of going off of memory at this point. But let's put a match to it and see what it does. Well, I think most of you would agree that went up pretty quick, which would, in my mind at least, give me an indication that the specific gravity was right around that 0.47, 0.48. And once again, there's those little white specks left behind, and you can see there's some smoke residue, but there's not a whole lot of charcoal blackness left behind. So in my mind, that's a fairly clean burning gunpowder. Now what it does in a thermal runaway in your gun barrel, I'll test that here pretty soon. I don't have a whole lot left, but it'll be enough to give us some sort of guideline as to how it works in your gun barrel with a thermal runaway. But here again, same little white specks, but all in all, it's fairly clean. So here's 20 grains of the aspen milled for 30 hours, and is supposed to have a specific gravity of 0.45. And see what it does. Well, that went up pretty quick, didn't it? Again, you got those little tiny white little pieces of potassium nitrate. A little bit of a smoky residue this time. Maybe I'm seeing it more pronounced because I'm in a better light. But all in all, that's a fairly clean burn. I mean, from my perspective, if I was to take this at a rendezvous and do like, you know, a 20 shot range, I wouldn't have to swab between shots. Because in my opinion, that's pretty darn clean. So I'm going to get set up with the next one. Probably be the alder, and we'll see how that does. Okay, so here's 20 grains of the alder, gunpowder milled for 30 hours. And as recently showed in a previous video, this is either a red or white alder variety within the species, and it has a specific gravity of 0.37. That went up mighty fast. Well, as you can see, there's a lot of charcoal residue left behind. There's still those little white flakes, but they're very, very minute. Again, emphasizing milling your gunpowder for, at least in my case, 30 hours. For me, that makes a difference. Now, how would this gunpowder react in your gun barrel with a thermal runaway? And or would I be willing to use this gunpowder, say like in a 21 shot course, and not have any problems with my gun fouling out, my gun barrel fouling out to where I have to clean between shots or every third or fourth shot? I would do that without having to worry about cleaning the barrel. It's that clean. All right, so let me get set up and we're going to test willow next. So before I burn test this willow, you need to know the full context. When I first started learning to make gunpowder, like a lot of you, I used the screening method. And the testing that I did at that time was with the 75, 15, 10. When I started learning about that extra gram of sulfur, I went through all my willow, measured out 100 grams, and then I added an extra gram of sulfur and I re-milled it all down to that fine powder. Now I cannot tell you if I milled it 30 hours or not. I think I was more concerned at that time just getting it back down to the powder and milling in that extra gram of sulfur. But let's see what it does. Well, I think most would agree that was pretty quick. The board itself is fairly clean, but there's a lot of those little white specks left behind. I don't know if it's any more excessive than anything else, but they are there. And that's why when it comes to this willow, you know, I just basically now save it for planking, stuff like that. I don't think that I would take this to a rendezvous and use it down the gun barrel, just simply because I'm going to show that I have something just a little bit better, or as I have shown, my junipers are better burning than this. So let me get reset up, and now I'm going to do the cherry, milled for 30 hours with a specific gravity of 0.50. Once again, here's the cherry, milled for 30 hours, specific gravity of 0.50. Okay, pretty clean. There's a few little white flakes in there, but they're very, very minute. And in case you're wondering, this right here, that's the match head. That's what that is. But it's pretty clean burning. And I'm going to do a burn test with the Swiss now that I milled or remilled, removed the graphite, and then I'm going to do that same test with the Swiss as it comes from the factory. Stay tuned. So I want you guys to look at this real close. This is the Swiss that I remilled. And at this point, it really doesn't look a whole lot different than any of the gunpowders that I've made previously, other than it just has a very dark shade of brown. Now, as I burn this, or as I turn this, I can still see some shiny stuff in it that I would consider to be the graphite that was not 100% completely removed. And then when I get to the factory Swiss, I'll do the same thing right here so you can judge for yourselves what the difference is. Look at all that smoky residue left behind the Swiss gunpowder. And again, I can see the little white flakes of what would be your potassium nitrate. But look at the smoky residue. Alright, now I'm going to get the factory. We'll do a burn with that and you can compare for yourselves. So there's the factory Swiss. And I think you can all see just how shiny that is. That, in my very strong opinion, would be the graphite, the heavy graphite coating or heavy graphite glazing, however you want to word it. But you can see the difference. Now let's see how it burns. So there's the block. Once again, that little chunk right there would be the match head. But look at all that smoky residue left behind. And I can tell you, and I don't know how well the camera's picking any of this up, but you can still see that those little white flakes of what everybody presumes, and I myself presume, is the potassium nitrate still left behind. So when you have people saying Swiss is the cleanest of the cleanest, the best of the best, why is Swiss leaving this much smoky residue behind? Let me do one more test and we'll do a comparison. So here's my juniper, pucked with a 1-inch pucking die, milled for 30 hours. Very little smoky residue. And I'm going to turn the camera and hopefully you guys can see that there's very little of the white pieces of potassium nitrate left behind. Very little in comparison to that Swiss that I burnt that was a factory gunpowder. Does that not impress you? It impresses me. And yet the junipers have a specific gravity of 0.48. Look at it real close. So, this is why I got a little perturbed underneath one of my videos when somebody said I was being biased and I changed the formula. That's why I went and I made my own damn video. I just did a very extensive burn test for the benefit of you guys to learn the values of specific gravities of your gunpowders as you burn them, and why there might be white specks left behind, why there's smoky residue left behind, why some of it's black. This is my juniper. Milled it for 30 hours. Specific gravity of 0.48. Now I do know that my friend William has done his own testing with junipers down where he lives in southern New Mexico, and he's telling me that those gunpowders are burning dirty for him. Now, the only conclusion that I can come to is that I got to ask, are you letting it mill for 30 hours? And or what does the groundwater have to do with the quality of your gunpowder? Even though the moisture is being forced out of your wood, whether you season it for several years or whether you char it up real slow and in a controlled environment, there's still element traces left behind. Is that the reason? Well, you guys can judge that for yourself. I just did a burn test comparing Swiss, no less, to my juniper. And you can physically see the difference. Okay? So anyhow, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. Go get this video edited and get it put up on my channel. I want to bid everybody adieu. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I hope that you can take away something of value from this very extensive burning test. And also, just a shameful plug, if you're looking for that one-of-a-kind item to make your persona as a buckskinner look better, please visit my Etsy store, Lane Beaver Trading Company, and take a look at what I have available, and there'll be new items put up from time to time. So once again, friends, thanks for watching, and everybody have a wonderful day. Bye.